This is a story about the 1970s. I was young in the 1970s. I graduated from high school in 1969. And the 1970s, especially the beginning of the 1970s, was full of this crazy energy. There'd been the civil rights movement, and then there was women's liberation, and gay liberation was just getting started, and there was the anti-war movement. And there was so much change, and it was really thrilling to be young. There was also, I mean, there were a lot of good things, but there was this kind of scary negative energy out there, this destructive, self-righteous chaos going on at the same time. Eventually, I don't even know the Sex Pistols, this punk group in England. They had a great song called "Anarchy in the UK." Well, this story is about anarchy in the USA. A friend of mine got me a job in a spaghetti restaurant, and it was a huge restaurant. This restaurant was, like, I used to be a warehouse, and it had been completely redesigned. And if you opened up every section of this spaghetti restaurant, you could put like 1,000 people in there. So it was just, this enormous, rivers of spaghetti going into these mouths of satellites. And my job, I had a low end job. My job was a dishwasher, and this was a very painful job. Bus boys would bring in these tubs of whatever, the garbage and the plates and the glasses and everything, and they'd drop them off, and I'd unload them as fast as I could, and we'd run all this stuff through the dishwashing machine. It was impossible to do this job and not get cut. My hands would get cut every single night. In those tubs, there would be forks and knives, and there'd be all kinds of different angles. When I'd reach in, I'd stab my fingers. My fingertips would get stabbed by these knives, and the tines of the forks. And sometimes there'd be broken glass in there. There'd be like wine goblets that would get smashed in there. And the busboys, they were supposed to always tell me, but sometimes they didn't know, or they got in a hurry, or they forgot, or maybe they told me and I forgot because there were so many tubs. And I'd reach in there and I'd stab myself on that broken glass. So and the only I couldn't really stop, so my hands would be all slimy wet, and I'd put band-aids on, and the only point of the band-aids, because the band-aids would always come off because of I'm so wet. And but they would stop the bleeding long enough that I could keep doing my job. And all the silverware had to be thrown into this like sanitizing liquid, this nasty green stuff. And I would have to reach in there and pull the silverware out, and run it through the dishwashing machine. And that stuff would get into my cuts and burn like crazy. So I was I was not a model of mental health when I had this job. One night I invented a game called Breakage. And the way this game worked, you got points for anything you broke. If you broke like a coffee cup, 1 point. If you broke a drinking glass, 1 point. A plate was worth 2 points. If you broke like a beer pitcher or a wine decanter, that was worth 3 points. There was a way to get a bonus of 100 points if you could shut down the whole system. Somehow, like if you could break the dishwashing machine, that's worth 100 points. The whole operation would grind to a halt at least temporarily. Oh, also, if you got caught, if you got yelled at by one of the managers, you got to double your score. Well, I won every night. I mean, I was centrally located. I could I became famous for this. People would challenge me, but after a while, nobody, no waiter or anybody else in the kitchen could really, succeed, at the game of breakage against me. I was like the master of breakage. So after a while, the only time I would ever get challenged would be if some disastrous thing happened by accident, and then the person would challenge me. And one night, they were big vats, huge vats of spaghetti sauce, different kinds of spaghetti sauce. And over these vats were on like a huge stove, industrial stove. And above it was a big vent. And inside the vent were light bulbs, rather large light bulbs lining this. And then the steam from the vats of spaghetti sauce would go up into this vent. Well, one time we had a new kid in the kitchen, and his job was he was supposed to pull down these screens, these filter screens, and wash them off and then put them back in. And he didn't know what he was doing, and he had a stick, and nobody was helping him. And he was trying to get one down, and it skewed, and just like that, it broke like three light bulbs. And the pieces of the light bulbs fell down into the, mostly onto the stove, but probably some of the broken glass fell right into those vats of spaghetti sauce. Well, you can't feed customers bits of broken glass. So all those vats had to be just dumped out. All that, just like gallons of spaghetti sauce, just had to be dumped out, and then we had to create new spaghetti sauce. So he challenges me. Well, he gets 100 points, just like that. Just like that, he gets 100 points. And then the cook was all over him, just yelling at him, reaming him out. So he got to double his score. So just like that, he gets 200 points. And there's only a couple hours left in the shift. I went crazy. I mean, I'm just throwing away silverware. I'm breaking stuff. Once in a while, I get yelled at. I get double my score. I can't do it. That's the only time in my whole, I guess you could call it, career at the restaurant that anyone beat me at the game of Breakage. There was a big investigation. Eventually, there was so many things missing that uh, that the managers would go into our coat room, where we would all come in from outdoors, and we started our shifts, and we'd put our jackets and our coats and things in this one room, and they would feel down our look in our pockets and everything like that, trying to they imagined theft was the problem. They had thieves stealing all these beer pitchers and wine decanters and drinking glasses, because they would take inventory, and this they were just losing things. No, they couldn't find anything. Finally, they brought in an investigator, and he talked to every single person that worked in the kitchen, one at a time. One at a time. We were all called in there, and I don't know what it tells you about that era, but everybody in that restaurant knew that I was the inventor of the game of Breakage, and the master, the champion, the world champion of Breakage, and not a single person told on me, not even one. In fact, um, eventually I just resigned. I just couldn't take it anymore, so I quit the job. And that night, the manager said one of the saddest things that has ever been said to me. He said, "Gary, you are the you can't quit, man. You can't quit. You're the best dishwasher I've ever had."